curving into a small smile. He crouched to gather the spilled pastries from the ground, his hands careful as if handling something precious. "These yours?" "Not anymore," Elena said with a rueful laugh, gesturing to the soggy mess. "They were for a regular customer. Guess I'll have to bake more." "You're a baker?" he asked, his tone curious, handing over the salvaged bag. "Yeah," she said. "I own the bakery just down the street. Harper's Sweet Escape." He straightened, his gaze lingering on her face for a moment longer than necessary. "I'll have to stop by sometime." Before she could respond, the man tipped his umbrella slightly, shielding her from the rain now falling in earnest. "Take care," he said, and with that, he turned and walked briskly into the night. The encounter stayed with Elena as she locked up the shop later that evening, shaking her head at the absurdity of it all. Men like him didn't wander into her life. She was 38, for heaven's sake, with a bakery on the brink of collapse, and no time for romantic daydreams. But something about his kindness, his quiet confidence, refused to be dismissed. The next morning, as the bakery filled with the smell of freshly baked croissants, Elena heard the jingle of the doorbell. She turned, expecting one of her regulars, but froze when she saw him, Umbrella Man, standing sheepishly in the doorway. His leather jacket was gone, replaced by a plain gray hoodie, and his boots were still rain-stained. "Morning," he greeted, his voice softer than it had been. "Last night." "Morning," she replied, brushing flour from her hands. "You're early for pastries." "I'm not here for pastries." He hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. "I was actually wondering if you're hiring." Elena blinked. "Hiring?" "Yeah, part-time, anything you've got," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes earnest. "I just moved here, and I'm between jobs right now. Figured I'd try my luck." Her gaze flicked to the broken shelf sagging in the corner, the leaky faucet in the prep area, and the stack of delivery invoices she didn't know how she'd pay. She could barely afford to keep herself afloat, let alone hire help. But something about his hopeful expression made her pause. "Well, we're not exactly swimming in cash," she said carefully. "But if you can fix that shelf over there, we might be able to work something out." He grinned, his whole face lighting up. "Deal." An hour later, the shelf stood sturdy and level, and Elena found herself offering him a cup of coffee as thanks. He introduced himself as Adam Bennett, a handyman looking to make ends meet until he figured out his next move. What he didn't share was the truth, that he was Adam Bennett, billionaire CEO of Bennett Lux Hotels, who had spent the last decade building an empire only to find himself disillusioned by the shallow, materialistic world he'd created. Adam had grown tired of being treated like a walking bank account, of women fawning over him for his money and status. So, he'd decided to take a break from it all, trading his tailored suits for thrift store finds, and renting a modest apartment in a neighborhood far removed from his usual haunts. He hadn't expected to meet someone like Elena, a woman whose laugh was as warm as her bakery's ovens, and whose eyes held a quiet strength he found himself drawn to. By the end of the day, Adam had not only fixed the faucet and reorganized the stockroom, but had also charmed half of Elena's regular customers with his easygoing demeanor. Elena, watching him from behind the counter, couldn't help but smile. He wasn't the most coordinated helper. He'd dropped a tray of cookies and bumped into the display case twice. But he worked with a determination that made up for it. "You're not bad," she said as they closed up shop. "For a guy who's between jobs." He laughed, a rich, genuine sound that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. "And you're not as scary as you look," he teased, dodging the playful swat she aimed at his arm. For the first time in months, Elena felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. But as the days passed, she began to notice odd things about Adam. The way he instinctively identified premium vanilla beans in her pantry, or how he seemed to know the exact temperature for tempering chocolate without being told. When she asked how he knew so much, he shrugged and said, "I've picked up a few things here and there." Still, she didn't press. She had her own secrets, like how the bakery was weeks away from shutting down if she couldn't scrape together enough to cover the rent. She didn't need to burden him with her problems. Late one evening, as they worked side by side to finish an order, Adam spoke up. "You know, this place has a lot of charm," he said. "Have you ever thought about marketing it more? Maybe hosting events or doing catering?" Elena sighed. "I'd love to, but it's hard enough just keeping the doors open." Adam frowned, his jaw tightening. She could see he wanted to say more, but held back. Instead, he reached for a wrench and began tightening a loose pipe under the sink, his actions speaking louder than any words. Elena watched him, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. For so long she'd carried the weight of the bakery alone, but here was this man, this stranger, offering his help without asking for anything in return. She didn't know what to make of him, but she knew one thing. Adam Bennett was far more than he seemed. The weeks that followed were some of the busiest and most surprising of Elena's life. Adam proved to be more than just a handyman. He was an idea man, a problem solver, and much to her delight, a natural with customers. After fixing the bakery's most pressing issues, Adam shifted his focus to Elena's struggles with marketing. "You've got a great product," he said one evening, as they sat on overturned milk crates in the stockroom, sharing a plate of day-old cookies. "But people need to know about it. Have you thought about hosting a tasting event? Or maybe partnering with local businesses?" Elena snorted. "Partnering? With who? The pizza place down the block. I don't think they're interested in artisan croissants." "Not them," Adam said, grinning. "But there's an art gallery opening next week a few streets over. I happened to meet the owner. Nice guy, big on supporting local businesses. I can introduce you." Elena raised a skeptical brow. "You just happened to meet the owner of an art gallery?" Adam shrugged, his face carefully neutral. "What can I say? I know people." She hesitated, unsure whether to be flattered or suspicious. But when Adam showed up the next day with a folder of details about the event and a list of potential menu items, she found herself agreeing to give it a shot. "You're relentless, you know that?" she teased as they worked on a batch of lemon tarts that evening. "Just persistent," Adam replied, flashing her a lopsided grin. "Trust me, this could be big for you." It turned out he was right. The art gallery was sleek and modern, its glass walls and polished floors a stark contrast to the cozy, rustic charm of Elena's bakery. She felt out of place as she set up, her display table, her flour-dusted apron a glaring anomaly amidst the sea of tailored suits and cocktail dresses. But Adam, wearing a simple black shirt and slacks, moved through the crowd with ease, introducing her to the gallery owner and a handful of well-dressed guests who seemed genuinely intrigued by her pastries. By the end of the night, Elena had handed out more business cards than she'd printed in the past year. Several attendees expressed interest in placing catering orders, and one even offered to feature her bakery in a local lifestyle magazine. "See?" Adam said as they packed up her empty trays. "Told you it would work." Elena smiled, the warmth of his confidence in her settling deep in her chest. Yeah, don't let it go to your head." But as they loaded her supplies into his borrowed truck, she caught him staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite place. Something soft and unguarded, like he was seeing her in a way no one else ever had. It made her heart stutter, though she quickly brushed it off. Later that night, as she counted the cash from a week's worth of sales, Elena found herself thinking about Adam more than she cared to admit. He was an enigma. Charming yet humble, capable yet oddly out of place in her world. She couldn't ignore the small luxuries in his behavior, like the way he navigated the gallery crowd so effortlessly, or how he seemed to know the exact temperature at which her oven performed best. But she dismissed the thoughts as paranoia. He was just a good guy trying to help, and it wasn't like she had the energy for anything more than friendship. Still, their dynamic continued to shift. Adam was always there, fixing, organizing, and supporting her in ways she hadn't realized she needed. And as they worked together, their conversations grew deeper. One evening, as they scrubbed down the kitchen after a long day, Adam asked, "So why don't you date?" Elena froze mid-swipe, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Adam said, leaning casually against the counter. "You're smart, funny, beautiful. So why aren't you seeing anyone?" She laughed, though the sound was more bitter than amused. "Beautiful? Adam, I'm 38. That ship sailed." "38 isn't old," he said, his tone serious now. "And it definitely doesn't make you any less beautiful." Her cheeks flushed, and she quickly turned back to scrubbing the counter. "Well, thank you for the compliment, but let's just say I've had my fill of heartbreak. Women of a certain age don't get fairy tales, Adam. We get reality." "Maybe reality's better," he said softly. "Fairy tales are overrated." Elena didn't respond, but his words lingered long after she'd turned out the lights and gone home. For his part, Adam found himself increasingly drawn to Elena's warmth and resilience. She was nothing like the high society women he was used to. No pretense, no games, just raw, honest determination. She made him laugh, challenged his ideas, and without realizing it, gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. But his double life was becoming harder to maintain. One afternoon, while Elena was out running errands, Adam's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, showed up at the bakery unannounced. "Adam," she said, her voice low and urgent, "we need to talk." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Claire, I told you I'm taking a break." "Well, your break is wreaking havoc on the board," she snapped. "The investors are restless, and there's a merger on the CR line. You can't just disappear." "I'm not disappearing," he said, his tone clipped. "I'm recalibrating." Claire rolled her eyes. "Call it what you want, but you can't hide forever. Sooner or later, you'll have to decide where you belong." Adam didn't respond, his gaze drifting to the bakery's window display. Through the glass, he could see Elena returning, her arms full of grocery bags, and her face lit with a smile he'd come to adore. "I'll handle it," he said finally, his voice firm. "But not yet." As Claire left, muttering under her breath, Adam felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't lied to Elena, not outright, but he also hadn't told her the full truth. And the closer he got to her, the harder it became to imagine walking away. That evening, as they worked side by side rolling out dough for an early morning order, Elena broke the comfortable silence. "Do you ever think about what you'd do if you could start over?" Adam glanced at her, surprised. "All the time." "What would you do?" she asked, her tone casual, but her eyes curious. "I don't know," he admitted. "Something simpler, something real." Elena smiled faintly, dusting flour from her hands. "Sounds nice." "It is," he said quietly, his gaze lingering on her. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and for a moment, the air between them felt charged with something unspoken. But before either could say anything, the oven timer dinged, breaking the spell as Elena turned to pull the pastries from the oven. Adam couldn't help but wonder, could this simple, imperfect life really be enough for someone like him? And more importantly, could he ever be enough for someone like her? The tiny Italian restaurant Adam had chosen was tucked into a quiet corner of the neighborhood, its warm, golden light spilling out onto the cobblestone street. Inside, the scent of fresh basil and garlic perfumed the air, and soft strains of a violin played in the background. Elena hesitated at the door, smoothing her flower-dusted dress and wondering for the 100th time why she'd agreed to this. "It's just dinner," she muttered to herself. "Not a date." But when Adam appeared from behind the maitre d', his smile effortlessly lighting up the room, she felt her heart stumble. He was dressed simply, in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, but he looked devastatingly handsome. And the way his eyes softened when they landed on her. That was the kind of thing fairy tales were made of. "You made it," he said, stepping toward her. "Barely," she replied, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach. "I almost turned around twice." Adam chuckled. "Come on, it's a celebration. You deserve this." He guided her to a corner table, where a candle flickered between them, casting a warm glow over the intimate setting. The waiter poured them, each a glass of wine, and as they toasted to the success of the gallery event, Elena felt herself relax. For once, she wasn't thinking about unpaid bills or looming deadlines. It was just her, Adam, and the unspoken connection that seemed to grow stronger with every shared glance. "You know," Adam said after their plates of handmade pasta arrived, "watching you at the gallery was incredible. You just lit up. I don't think you realize how magnetic you are." Elena nearly choked on her sip of wine. "Magnetic? Me?" "Yes, you," Adam said firmly, leaning forward. "The way you talk about your pastries, about what you've built, it's inspiring. You're inspiring." Heat crept up her neck as she waved him off. "You're laying it on a little thick, don't you think?" "No," he said, his voice dropping to something softer, more serious. "I mean it, Elena. You're one of the strongest, most beautiful women I've ever met." She froze, her fork hovering mid-air. His words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. She wanted to brush it off, to laugh it away, but the way he was looking at her, like she was the only person in the world, made it impossible. "Adam," she began, but she didn't know how to finish. He was younger, mysterious, and far too good to be true. And yet, she couldn't deny the way her heart raced every time he was near. Sensing her hesitation, Adam reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing lightly against her knuckles. "I'm not just saying this to flatter you," he said, his voice steady. "You've changed something in me, Elena. You've made me see the world differently. And Adam?" A sharp voice interrupted, cutting through the intimate moment like a knife. Startled, Elena withdrew her hand as a woman appeared at their table. She was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored blazer and heels that clicked against the tiled floor. Her expression was one of barely concealed annoyance. "Elena, this is Claire," Adam said, his tone suddenly guarded. "She, works with me." Elena smiled politely, though she couldn't help but notice the tension radiating from Adam. "Nice to meet you." Claire barely acknowledged her. "Adam, we need to talk," she said, her tone brisk. "Now." "Claire, I'm in the middle of—" Adam began, but she cut him off. "It's urgent," she said, her eyes flicking meaningfully toward Elena. Elena's stomach twisted. "It's fine," she said quickly, pushing back her chair. "I'll give you 2 minutes." "Elena, wait," Adam started, but she was already halfway to the restroom, her pulse pounding in her ears. As she splashed cold water on her face, Elena tried to shake off the unease creeping over her. Who was Claire, really? And why did Adam suddenly seem like a man with something to hide? When she returned to the table, Adam looked visibly tense, and Claire was gone. He stood as she approached, his expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry about that." "Don't worry about it," she said, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Work stuff, I'm guessing." "Something like that," he said, but the evasiveness in his tone only deepened her doubt. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, though the easy warmth between them seemed dimmed. When Adam walked her back to her apartment, he hesitated on the stoop, as if searching for the right words. "Good night, Adam," Elena said softly, cutting him off before he could speak. She didn't trust herself to hear whatever excuse he was about to make. The next day, as she restocked the bakery's shelves, Elena couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Her suspicions were confirmed when, later that evening, she overheard voices coming from the back office. She crept closer, her heart sinking as she recognized Adam's voice. "I can't just walk away, Claire," he was saying, his tone low, but firm. "I need more time." "You've had time," Claire snapped. "And while you've been playing house here, the board is falling apart. Do you have any idea the damage control I've been doing since you left?" "I didn't leave," Adam said, his voice tight. "I stepped back. And for once in my life, I'm doing something that actually matters." "Matters?" Claire scoffed. "You're Adam Bennett, billionaire CEO of Bennett Lux Hotels. You don't step back. You lead." Elena's breath caught in her throat. Billionaire CEO? Her mind reeled as the pieces fell into place. The expensive knowledge of premium ingredients, the ease with which he navigated high-end events, the mysterious luxuries he seemed to take for granted. It had all been right in front of her, and she'd been too blind to see it. Feeling like the ground had been ripped out from beneath her, Elena stepped into the office. Both Adam and Claire turned, their expressions shifting to shock as they realized she'd heard everything. "Elena," Adam began, his voice desperate. "I can explain." "Explain what?" she said, her voice trembling. "That everything about you was a lie?" "It wasn't a lie," he said quickly. "I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted to be normal, to be with someone who didn't care about my money or my title." "And you thought I'd be perfect for that little experiment?" she snapped, her eyes blazing. "What, was I supposed to be flattered that a billionaire decided to slum it in my bakery?" "It's not like that," Adam pleaded. Save it," she said, cutting him off. "You think I'm too old, too ordinary for someone like you, and maybe I am. But at least I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not." Adam stepped toward her, his eyes raw with emotion. "You're wrong, Elena. You're the only woman who's ever made me feel ordinary in the best possible way. You made me feel human." But her heartbreak was too fresh, her insecurities too loud. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't be a part of your world, Adam." Before he could stop her, she turned and walked out, leaving him standing in the glow of the bakery's soft lights, his heart shattered in her absence. The bakery felt unbearably quiet without Adam. Days turned into nights, and though Elena threw herself into her work, the spark that had fueled her passion for years seemed to have dimmed. She kneaded dough with mechanical precision, greeted customers with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and avoided the corner of the counter where Adam used to lean while teasing her about her grumpy baker face. Her regulars noticed the change, but Elena brushed off their concerns, insisting she was just tired. In truth, she felt hollow. The betrayal she'd felt when she discovered Adam's secret still lingered, but the ache left by his absence was worse. She hated how much she missed him. His laugh, his ideas, the way he made her feel like she could conquer the world. But trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been broken too many times before. On the morning of her bakery's 5th anniversary, Elena unlocked the door to find the sidewalk surprisingly empty. She frowned. Normally her regulars were lined, up by now, eager to grab their favorite pastries and wish her well. She tried to shrug it off, telling herself it was a slow start to the day, but the unease in her chest only grew. A few hours later, as she prepped a batch of strawberry tarts, The bell above the door jingled. Elena looked up and nearly dropped her rolling pin. Maggie, one of her most loyal customers, stood in the doorway holding a sleek ivory envelope. Behind her, the street was now abuzz with activity. People dressed in their Sunday best were gathered outside, chatting excitedly and holding identical envelopes. "What's going on?" Elena asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Maggie beamed and handed her the envelope. "You'll want to see for yourself." Elena opened it with trembling fingers, her brow furrowing as she read the elegant script. "You are cordially invited to the Harper's Sweet Escape Charity Bake-Off, hosted by Adam Bennett. Location: the Pavilion on Hawthorne Avenue. Time: 3 p.m. Her heart skipped a beat. Adam? What was he doing? Before she could ask Maggie for details, the woman was already gone, hurrying down the street with the growing crowd. Elena stood frozen, clutching the invitation as her emotions warred within her. Curiosity, anger, hope, and beneath it all a flicker of excitement she didn't want to admit. At 2:45, after pacing the bakery for what felt like an eternity, Elena finally grabbed her coat and followed the throng of people toward Hawthorne Avenue. She told herself she was going to see what kind of ridiculous stunt Adam had pulled this time. Not because she cared. Definitely not because she cared. When she arrived, the sight that greeted her nearly stopped her in her tracks. The pavilion, a stunning glass-walled event space, had been transformed into a dreamlike wonderland. Twinkling fairy lights draped from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over the room. Tables were laden with an array of pastries, her pastries, arranged with exquisite care. Flowers in soft pastel hues adorned every surface, their scent mingling with the sweet aroma of baked goods. A stage had been set up at the far end of the room, and standing on it, looking as nervous as she'd ever seen him, was Adam.